The headline reads like a thriller. Ukraine waited for Russian commanders to enter. Then 1,150 kilograms Flamingo warheads meet Crimea bases. It is a stark, almost cinematic declaration of a meticulously planned and devastatingly executed military operation. But behind the dramatic phrasing lies a story of profound strategic significance. A story of intelligence, patience, technological innovation, and the calculated application of violence that marked a pivotal moment in the Russo-Ukrainian War. This is not merely an account of an explosion. It is the story of how Ukraine reshaped the battle space, turning a symbol of Russian occupation into a theater of vulnerability and demonstrating that no headquarters, no matter how deeply entrenched, was beyond reach. The date was a closely guarded secret, but the impact was broadcast to the world. In the pre-dawn hours of a late summer morning in 2023, the occupied peninsula of Crimea, which the Kremlin had long declared a secure Russian fortress, was shaken to its core. Two of its most critical military nodes, the headquarters of the Black Sea Fleet in Sevastopol and a key command and logistics base further inland, were violently struck. The weapon of choice, the British-supplied Storm Shadow and its French counterpart, the Scalping G, long-range, stealth cruise missiles, known in Ukrainian military parlance by the evocative codename Flamingo. Their 1,150 kilograms, approximate 2,500 pounds, Broach, Bomb Royal Ordnance Augmented Charge, warheads were not just random munitions. They were precision-guided instruments of a new Ukrainian doctrine, designed for one purpose: to decapitate Russian command and control at its most vulnerable moment. This operation, codenamed Siren's Call by Ukrainian planners, was the culmination of months of preparation. It was a masterpiece of modern asymmetric warfare, blending human espionage, signals intelligence, SIGINT, geospatial intelligence, GEOINT, open-source intelligence, OSINT, and cutting-edge Western technology. It was a gamble that risked precious resources and invaluable intelligence assets. Its success, however, would send an unmistakable message to Moscow, to Kiev, and to the world. The initiative was shifting. Part 1. The stage. Crimea, the unassailable fortress. To understand the magnitude of this strike, one must first appreciate the symbolic and strategic weight of Crimea. Annexed by Russia in 2014 in a move condemned internationally as illegal, the peninsula was more than just occupied territory. It was a trophy, a foundational pillar of Putin's project of restoring Russian greatness. It was militarized at an astonishing pace, transforming from a sunny tourist destination into the most heavily fortified piece of land in Europe. The Black Sea Fleet headquarters, situated in the historic port city of Sevastopol, this complex was the beating heart of Russian naval power in the region. From here, Admiral Viktor Sokolov and his staff commanded the fleet that enforced a brutal blockade on Ukraine's ports, strangling its economy and threatening global food security. It was from Crimea that the missile strikes on Ukrainian cities were coordinated, and from where the amphibious threat to Odessa emanated. The headquarters was not just a building, it was a symbol of Russian imperial continuity, harking back to the Crimean War and the Soviet era. It was protected by layers of air defense systems, S-400 Triumph, Panzer, S-1, and Buk M3, creating a supposed bubble of impenetrability. The command and logistics base. While the naval HQ held symbolic value, a separate, less publicized command center deeper in Crimea served as a critical node for land and air operations supporting the southern front. This base coordinated the flow of troops, ammunition, and equipment from Russia proper across the Kerch Bridge and into Zaporizhia and Kherson oblasts. Striking this target would cripple the logistical backbone of the Russian occupation forces in the south. The Russian High Command operated with a sense of ingrained impunity within these walls. They believed the distance from the front lines, the multi-layered air defenses, and the political taboo surrounding strikes on Russian territory, as they framed it, made them untouchable. This arrogance was their critical vulnerability. Ukraine, patient and precise, was about to exploit it. Part 2. The instrument, the Flamingo, and its devastating gift. The Storm Shadow/Scalp EG missile was the perfect tool for this surgical task. Its deployment to Ukraine in May 2023 was a game-changer, providing a capability that Kiev had desperately craved. Stealth and penetration. With a low observable, stealthy airframe, the missile is designed to evade enemy radar. It flies at nap-of-the-earth altitudes, following pre-programmed terrain-hugging routes to avoid detection until the very last moment. Fire and forget with AI. Once launched from a Ukrainian Su-24 Fencer aircraft, specially modified to carry the Western munition, the missile is autonomous. Its onboard TERPROM, terrain profile matching navigation system uses a preloaded digital 3D map to guide it to the target area with astonishing accuracy, independent of GPS, which can be jammed. The Broach warhead. This is where the 1,150 kilograms Flamingo earns its name. The Broach, Bomb Royal Ordnance Augmented Charge, is a tandem warhead system. It consists of an initial penetrator, a small, shaped charge that blasts a hole through reinforced concrete, earth berms, or armored doors. The main warhead. Moments later, the primary 1,150 kilograms high explosive charge follows through the newly created pathway and detonates inside the target structure. This internal explosion generates catastrophic overpressure, sucking the oxygen out of bunkers and turning fortified rooms into tombs. It is designed specifically to destroy hardened targets like command bunkers, aircraft shelters, and ammunition depots. Ukraine had used these missiles before to striking effect, notably on the Russian naval base in Sevastopol and on the Kerch Bridge. But previous strikes were tactical, hitting ships, supply depots, and infrastructure. Operation Siren's Call was different. It was strategic, and its target was not what but who. Part 3. The Intelligence Web, Weaving the Trap. The launch of the missiles was merely the final violent act of a long and intricate operation. The true battle was won weeks and months earlier in the shadows of intelligence gathering. Ukraine, with assistance from Western partners, constructed a multi-layered intelligence picture so detailed it could predict Russian behavior. Human intelligence, the core of the operation. Sources within Crimea, sympathetic locals, embedded partisans, or even compromised Russian personnel, provided irreplaceable information. They reported on patterns of life at the bases. When senior officers arrived, when high-level meetings were scheduled, the security routines, and the locations of key command elements within the complexes. This network was the canary in the coal mine, signaling when the big fish were in the pond. SIGINT, Signals Intelligence, the National Security Service of Ukraine, SBU, and Military Intelligence, GUR, likely with support from NATO agencies, engaged in massive electronic eavesdropping. They intercepted and decrypted Russian military communications. The goal was to identify the unique electronic signatures, via voice recognition or communication patterns, of high-ranking commanders. An increase in secure communications traffic between the Crimean bases and the general staff in Moscow often signaled a high-level meeting. The presence of specific senior officers could be inferred from their guard details' radio chatter or their aides' logistical requests. GeoInt, Geospatial Intelligence. Western satellites, including commercial providers like Maxar and Planet Labs, provided constant imagery of the bases. Analysts pored over these images, looking for telltale signs. Was Admiral Sokolov's distinctive staff car parked in its usual spot? Were there additional security details? Was there unusual activity suggesting the preparation for a high-level conference? This pattern of life analysis built a baseline of normal activity, making anomalies stand out. OSINT, open source intelligence. Ironically, Russian arrogance often provided its own intelligence. Pro-Russian military bloggers and telegram channels, eager to boast of their side's strength, sometimes inadvertently leaked information about the movements and locations of senior officials. Ukrainian intelligence scoured these sources, cross-referencing boasts with more classified intelligence to build a verified picture. This fusion of intelligence streams created a predictive model. Ukrainian planners didn't just know where the commanders were, they could anticipate when they would be there. They identified a specific window of opportunity, a scheduled quarterly operational review, where commanders from the front lines would travel to Crimea to brief fleet and district leadership. The trap was set. All that was needed was the patience to wait for the perfect moment. Part 4. The Execution, Siren's Call. The day arrived. Intelligence confirmed a critical mass of senior officers was present at both target sites. The order was given. The launch, under cover of darkness, Ukrainian Su-24s roared down a runway somewhere in western Ukraine. They climbed to altitude, released their precious payloads, and immediately turned back to avoid entering the range of Russian air defenses. The Flamingos were on their way, skimming mere meters above the waves of the Black Sea to avoid radar detection. The penetration, Russian early warning radar likely picked up faint, fleeting contacts, but the missiles' low altitude and stealth features made them difficult to track. As they approached the coast, they climbed slightly to identify pre-programmed terrain features, then dove back down to race inland. Air defense systems in Crimea screamed to life, but engaging a low-flying, stealthy cruise missile is a nightmare. Some missiles were undoubtedly intercepted. The dense air defense saw to that. But the strategy was one of saturation and precision. Not every missile needed to get through, just the right ones. The impact. At the Black Sea Fleet HQ, the moment of impact was likely preceded by a split second of eerie silence, then the deafening roar of the initial penetrator, followed instantly by the apocalyptic detonation of the main warhead. The massive building, a symbol of Russian power, was eviscerated from the inside. Windows blew out for blocks around. A huge plume of smoke and dust billowed into the morning sky. Simultaneously, the same scene played out at the inland command base. The Broach warheads performed exactly as designed, drilling into hardened structures before unleashing hell within. The physical damage was immense. Buildings were reduced to smoldering rubble. Parked vehicles were flipped and burned. But the true damage was human and systemic. Part 5. The aftermath. Decapitation and disarray. The immediate aftermath was chaos, compounded by Russian disinformation and Ukrainian psychological operations. The human cost. Russia initially downplayed the attack, claiming a drone was shot down and that only one serviceman was missing. This lie quickly unraveled. Ukrainian intelligence claimed over 100 officers were casualties, including the top leadership of the Black Sea Fleet, while Admiral Sokolov initially appeared in a video days later, likely pre-recorded. The strike's success was not about one man. It was about the decapitation of an entire command structure. Colonels, lieutenant colonels, captains, and admirals, the experienced brains that planned and executed the war in the South, were wiped out in an instant. The loss of such institutional knowledge and experience is a wound from which a military cannot quickly recover. Systemic collapse. The strike caused a paralysis that rippled far beyond Crimea. Command and control, C2, for the Black Sea Fleet and Southern forces was severely degraded. Operations were disrupted. The secure communications networks that ran through those nodes were destroyed. Subordinates were suddenly thrust into roles they were unprepared for, a phenomenon known as command cascade failure. The intricate logistics chain managed from the inland base fell into disarray, causing temporary shortages at the front. Psychological shock. The psychological impact was perhaps the most significant. The myth of Crimea's invulnerability was shattered. For Russian officers, a posting to Crimea was no longer a safe, rear-echelon assignment. It had become a frontline deployment with a target on their back. Morale plummeted. An atmosphere of paranoia and distrust set in. Who had leaked the information? Were there traitors among them? This internal suspicion is a potent weapon that degrades operational effectiveness far more than any bomb. The Kerch Bridge effect. This strike, following earlier attacks on the Kerch Bridge, reinforced a new reality. Russia's logistical and command lifelines to Crimea were under active and effective assault. The peninsula was being transformed from a secure base of operations into a vulnerable salient. Part 6. The strategic resonance. A turning point. Operation Siren's Call was more than a successful tactical strike. It was a strategic event with far-reaching implications. Shift in initiative. Ukraine demonstrated it could not only defend but also project power deep behind enemy lines to strike at will. It seized the initiative, forcing Russia onto the defense.